coordination of various projects, mainly EU funded, but also with some national funding. And one of those projects is also this DataverseLV repository that we'll talk more about today. And perhaps it's good to sort of realize how we got here and how did we end up having a Dataverse-based repository in Latvia. So the initiative was sparked by the Latvian Open Science Strategy, which was a document developed by the Ministry of Education and Science, but also involved a lot of experts in establishing some sort of milestones that we as a country should reach for implementing various open science practices in Latvia. And also in the strategy, the establishment of VPC was founded, and also the Data Stewards Project, as we call it, or the project that we represent. And I will talk a bit about that a bit later as well. And within this project, we also launched the DataverseLV repository. Alongside other kind of research data management skills that we are developing and solutions that we are implementing at the universities and all research institutions in Latvia. And already in this open science strategy, fair research data was sort of named as one of the 3 main pillars that we should strive for, meaning that we're acknowledging that research data is taking growing importance in academia and in research, that not only open access publications of the scientific articles are important, but also the data behind all kinds of scientific findings, and that this data should be managed in a transparent way. And for that, we need good and solid infrastructure. And I think in the development of this open science strategy, there was also some work around looking for solutions that exist already for repositories and making data fair. So Dataverse as an open source platform was chosen as the one to be implemented in our country as well. So as I mentioned, this growing importance of FAIR and data sets as important research outputs have led to this idea that we need a national multidisciplinary research data repository where ideally all the data that is produced by Latvian researchers and scientists can be found in one place. So it creates some sort of overview or a catalog of what do we do in research, and what kind of data are available for reuse. I think important aspect in the European Union as a whole, this idea of data sovereignty is growing, that we want to sort of maintain oversight, and we want to sort of preserve the data in a locally administered infrastructure where we have a sort of say of how this data is used and where it's stored and how it's backed up and so on. And also important aspect always has been this support of data stewards, and we intentionally chose the repository to be to include data quality checks as well, to ensure that we really can comply with these FAIR principles, that data is findable, accessible, interoperable, but very importantly also reusable, that it is described in a proper way, and the metadata is as rich as it is possible. So for that, we needed data stewards to provide support in and quality checks before depositing data sets. And as I said, of course, the idea that we promote FAIR principles in this way, and that this repository would be also not only Latvian national data repository, but it would be integrated with as many other systems that are out there within the European Union, with the European Open Science Cloud ecosystem, and so on. I think also another myth that we want to spell, it's that repository is not just where you store the data long term. It is really a very practical way how you can practice open science. And in that way also increase the transparency and reproducibility of your work as a researcher, that by making data openly available, or at least the metadata, making metadata openly available, we do sort of public good. The money that is spent for research purposes then is the results of that work are publicly available, and other researchers can benefit from that, and the wider society can also have these outputs available. And also, yeah, the idea that it is for with many benefits for the researchers as well. So as I said, yeah, the way how we see it, why researchers should use DataverseLV or think about the long-term preservation and making their data available openly, is to support in very practical ways open science principles. Also, a lot of funders and a lot of scientific journals these days require you to comply with FAIR principles or with open science principles. So having infrastructure available to you where you can deposit the data that is fair, that is compliant with these funder requirements or with scientific journal requirements, yeah, makes it easier for researchers also in the daily work. And we believe also that by making data available, it is also increasing exposure to researchers, that especially that data sets can be found in all kinds of search engines and harvested in all kinds of aggregator systems, with the idea that yeah, other researchers can find your data sets, contact you in that way, creating new collaborations, but also that it increases the way the data sets can be cited, and in that way also increasing the impact for researchers. So I already mentioned, yeah, that all of this is happening within the so-called Data Stewards project, as we call it, or it's an European funded project for support for implementing open science, developing solutions for shared use of research data and participation in the EOSC. And it has kind of three main parts, and DataverseLV is like one of these major parts of the project. So establishing the repository and all kinds of resources available. But very importantly, I also want to stress the role of data stewards. So before this project, actually, the role of data steward did not exist in Latvia as such. So it was introduced via this strategy and via our project. So it's a fairly new set of skills that people now possess. So there's yeah, about more than 20 data stewards trained in Latvia, and the number is also growing as other institutions also see the importance of research data management and are also introducing data steward roles in their institutions. And that is all done with the idea to improve research data management, not only at that later stage when we make data available, but all throughout the life cycle of data, starting from planning your research, collecting data, working with the data, and analyzing the data in a way that would comply with the open science practices, but also just good, transparent, secure research data management. And for that, we also have worked on various institutional RDM policies, and created a lot of educational materials and have informational activities throughout this project. So for the DataverseLV as a platform, so we have chosen to make it not only a repository, but basically a whole platform with research data management resources. So on our website, you will find not only the repository itself, where you can deposit data sets and make them openly available, or where you can add your metadata for data sets, but you can also find a lot of information about the events that we're organizing in the Latvian Data Stewards Network, all kinds of activities that have happened, sharing all kinds of tips and tricks and best practices in the research data management guide that we have developed, with practical advice of how to manage research data, and also how you can contact data stewards. So currently, data steward support is available at the 4 universities: at University of Latvia, Latvia University of Life Sciences and Technologies, Riga Stradiņš University, and Riga Technical University, and then all the other research institutions can reach out to us at VPC, and we're covering basically all the researchers' needs in research data management across all the research institutions in Latvia. So that's from my side, kind of an overview of how we got here and why we're standing here and talking about Dataverse repository today. And now I will give a word to my colleague Kristaps, who has been really the key person in setting up the repository from kind of the administrative side and developing all kinds of procedures that we did not have before, because we really started from scratch. So we had Dataverse as a software, but you will hear from Kristaps how much you need extra to actually run a repository, all kinds of procedures and documents and certificates and so on. So he's going to talk more about that. So I'll give my word to Kristaps. Thank you.
Are there any questions maybe in the chat?
No. Yeah.
No. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Kristaps Oškalns, and for the past year, I've led the development of the repository and the certification process for it as well. So a bit of an overview of the repository itself. It is a national general research data repository, which is free for all researchers in Latvia, because it's funded from the EU project and the national funding. It is hosted in the Latvia State Radio Television Center, which is a national infrastructure that has ISO 27000 certification for its infrastructure, so it's secure and sustainable. And as I said, the project initially was funded by the EU funding, and it will be sustained by the national funding after the project ends this May. And of course, we are supported by the Ministry of Education and Science, and they oversee the funding and our organization as a whole. Then let's look at the development timeline for our repository. First, in April of 2025, we launched the demo Dataverse instance, which was meant for testing the software and further installations on it, and also just training the researchers, first of all, the data stewards on the software, but also researchers could use it as well. Then after, in May of 2025, we launched the production instance of the repository with the digital object identifier integration, which meant that all of the data sets that were deposited were minted with these DOIs. Then in May and June, we created the 4 university collections, which are the partner universities of our organization, and published their first data sets. Then in July, we registered the repository in Red3 Data Registry and also integrated into the OpenAir Explorer platform, which meant that our datasets, their metadata, were harvested and available to larger public. Then also in July, we published initial policies and documentations that were needed for the Quarter Seal certification. And after that, in August, we started harvesting other datasets that were deposited, for example, in Latvian repository DataverseLV, which is a language repository, and from our partner university's repository RSU Dataverse, which has more medical datasets and yes, more specific datasets. And also we harvested some historical datasets from Zenodo, specifically from the Latvian Culture Academies community, thus broadening our datasets that are available in the repository. And in September, we enabled analytics for the repository and indexing in the Google search. That was done before October, when we held the DataverseLV public launch event, which signified publicly available platform. A little bit about how the data deposit happens in our repository. First, a researcher needs to create his account using the institutional email. Then they need to contact the data steward that administers that institution collection. When the data steward grants the user's role as a dataset creator, they can create a dataset, attach metadata and documentation that is needed. Then they can submit it for a review. There's a straightforward process, but then data steward checks the dataset according to our quality checklist. And if something needs to be revised, he then sends it back to the researcher. And if the revisions are done and everything meets our standards, we publish the dataset and a DOI is assigned to it as well. And here are the broad topics that are included in our quality checklist. We check if the dataset has open file formats. We have a guide for that. Then if there are tabular data, then is it tidy? Is it structured well? Is it machine readable? Then we do not accept sensitive data. It must be anonymized for now. In the future, maybe we could accept it. Then we check if there are documentation for the dataset. That means that minimal documentation is a README file for which we have a template ready on our website. And we check if the metadata is rich enough and if it consists of the content that's in the dataset. A little bit about the statistics this past year. We have 11 institutional collections published. 63 datasets are deposited directly into our repository, and 307 are harvested datasets from other Latvian research datasets in other repositories. Our project website, as Diana showed, that consists of the RDM guide and other useful materials, has had more than 5,000 visitors, and our repository has 2.8 thousand users thus far. And here you can see our institutions and their logos that are published on our repository. And let's go in depth about the certification process. So in our project, the Quarter Seal certificate was one of the main objectives that we needed to receive. So what is this certificate? It consists of 16 requirements, and it can be divided in 3 parts. The organizational infrastructure, that means that your repository is well organized, it has the structure in place, and everything's laid out, who is responsible for what. Then you have digital object management. You are assessing the quality of the data sets, and you are like, yeah, you're showing how you are preserving the data sets in long term. Then we have the IT and security side of things. You're showing that your infrastructure is sustainable and secure. Then after that, you have the self-evaluation and review part, where you describe your policies, your procedures, and show the evidence of the things you are writing in your self-evaluation. And then the reviewers are checking it and yeah, checking through your evidence on your public website. Is it if the contents consist of the things that you write on the evaluation. And then if everything is in order, reviewers then grant your certification and you are certified for 3 years. And here is the timeline for the certification process for our repository. On the spring of 2025, we started with studying the quarter seal requirements, but more importantly, we studied other successful repository applications because yeah, that was easier for us, and we found other Dataverse installations that the infrastructure was similar to ours, so we could align our documents and evaluation. Then on May of 2025, we defined our mission, the scope of the repository, and the community that we serve, and also started to develop the core policies for the operation of the repository. Then on the 30th of June, we drafted the initial Dataverse self-evaluation document, which we submitted to the quarter seal board. And after about 3 months, they gave us the feedback and requested more public workflows or internal documents and workflows that we used to assess the quality and so on. We had to publish them on the website so everyone, the users that deposit the data, see everything that we are doing there. And yeah, our governance model had to be cleared up. How do we operate? And we had to provide more direct evidence links. Again, in about 3 months, in January, we had revised everything that was needed from us. We submitted our self-evaluation again, published internal workflows, policies, and mapped every evidence that we had. And in about a month, they requested a little bit more clarity on some of the things. We had to show the operation in more of a like structural diagram, how everything is laid out. And then we had to provide evidence on how does our repository align with fair, trust, and care principles. And in about only a week later, we had revised everything because not that much had to be done, and updated our web page, the structure and the alignment with the principles. And then we had to wait for around 2 months and then receive the certificate of quarter seal. So we are certified for 3 years now. A little bit more about the documentation that we had to develop. First of all, a privacy policy, which is a standard document that every website that gathers user data needs, that we created. Then a terms of use, broader document that defines the rules and responsibilities of users and the administrators of the repository. Then a more specific document, the data deposit agreement, which outlines the terms under which researchers deposit the data. The previously mentioned quality checklist that helps researchers to prepare the data for deposit. And digital preservation policy, which defines how the repository preserves the data for long term. And more specific documents, the preferred file format guide, and just a broad overview of data deposit process in the repository as well. And here is the organizational structure that we have in place. Here you can see multiple stakeholders that work with our organization and the repository, the VPC Advisory Board, which provides strategic oversight of the organization. Then we have the Ministry of Education and Science, which oversees and provides the funding of the organization. And yeah, the VPC itself, which develops, manages, governs the repository. We have 5 full-time equivalent data stewards and 1 full-time equivalent systems administrator. Then we have the Latvian State Radio and Television Center, which hosts our repository infrastructure. We just provide our technical specification that we need for the repository hosting. And we have the partner institutions, which each of them has 4 to 5 data stewards, and they provide the user support and initial curation of the data sets that's deposited in their institutional collection. And just a recap of what are the lessons that we learned from this certification. It is important that you shift from describing everything in the self-evaluation report, even things that are internal, but rather publish them with evidence on your website and link those evidence to the self-evaluation report and describe it in that document. Then it's good to document risk assessment, how you are ensuring the long-term preservation of the repository data sets. Then provide a clear organizational structure, who is responsible for what, and so on. And then evidence of the training and recruitment of procedures of the data stewards or people involved in the repository management. We have a dedicated section of the website where we show all the conferences, the training that the data stewards attend. And then it is always good to provide a sustainable funding model. Like we have this project funding that is the initial funding for the repository development, and then the further national funding that will prolong its work. Then a little bit more about the future plans of the repository. Here I have 3 sections that I've outlined, and the first one, the technical side. The first things that we have to do is integrate the EduGain authentication, which means that every researcher or user that is from an academic field, he can authenticate with his home institution credentials seamlessly with a single sign-on. And then we would like to improve the repository's accessibility and branding of it. Right now, you can see we don't have a logo of the repository. That would be nice. And then on the governance side, we would like to update our policies regularly and continuously. And then, as I said before, we would like to accept sensitive data in future and also provide some legal documents or templates for data transfer of these sensitive documents between parties involved. And then on the community side of things, we would like to expand our training to the researchers and data stewards in research and data management, and also in the Dataverse repository usage as well. And as you've seen, we have 11 institution collections right now, but there are more institutions in Latvia, so we would like to onboard them as well in future. And then the next stage, I think, is to integrate the repository into the European Open Science Cloud, the Latvian node. And here you can see I've drawn a little bit of a scheme of the EOSC Latvia node, how it will be built. And this project has started just now, and it will be ongoing till 29th year. And here you can see some of the stakeholders that will be involved in this node. First of all, the EOSC thematic and national nodes from other European countries, which will provide services and data sets to our node and vice versa. Then we have the researchers, organizations, and industry that would use these data sets and services. And here comes our repository, DataverseLV, Right now, it is expected that we would harvest the dataset metadata into the central metadata catalog in the EOS Latvia node, but there may be future integrations as well. And yeah, it is expected to build an EOS Latvia competency center, which would consist maybe from IT specialists and data stewards as well, that would support and train the EOS community on all of the services that could be used. And here as well, you can see the EduGain as the authentication layer, and then the node itself, which would consist of high-speed data transfer upgrades in Latvia, then secure large file transfer as well, federated file sync and share that would allow to share the datasets actively in the project lifecycle. Then the previously mentioned central metadata catalog that would catalog all of the datasets available and also the services. And also interactive notebooks with storage and compute and other data usage and security services that need to be specified still. Okay, so these are the events. Thank you for listening. And these are the future events that our network will host. Tomorrow and on the 8th of May, we have the Dataverse information events. Then we have an event that is in Latvian, I think. Yes. Yeah, it's like, it's the research data management, legal aspects of research data management. And then we have a large conference, one-day conference called Forward Together, that will host all of our projects in the organization. We will showcase everything that's done and will be done in future. And then on the 22nd of May, we have an event called the Role of Data Repositories in Promoting Open Science. If you want to follow our events, you can go to our website and check out any future events as well. Okay, are there any questions in the chat? Okay, my colleague says that there aren't. Okay, so thank you for listening, and we can change to the next presentation. So, okay, I will give the floor to Gustavo Durand. Okay.
So hello, everyone. My name is Gustavo Duran. I'm the tech lead and architect of the Dataverse project. So first, let me just say thank you very much for inviting us and having us here. I was fortunate enough to be able to arrive a few days early, and I've just been enjoying walking around the city, seeing the beautiful architecture, learning about the history and the culture here, and it's all very lovely and wonderful. And so thank you. How do I proceed? Slides? I thought down or right, but.
Oh, no, you can click here.
Click there. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll first start with just an introduction to the Dataverse, the project and the software. Oops. Okay. So we'll start with an overview. So what is Dataverse? It is an open source platform to publish, cite, and archive research data. And so what that means is it's software that we provide that we've worked on out of Harvard University and with the community that anyone can download and install and run for their institution or their university. We've built it because it's not just run for us, but for anyone and for all sorts of data and research. We've built it to support multiple different types of data, multiple types of users, multiple types of workflows. And when we talk about some of the features, we'll get a better understanding of how we do that. We've been working on it since 2006 out of the IQSS, the Institute for Quantitative Social Science at Harvard. Prior to that, there's a prehistory of the Dataverse, which the original project was called the VDC, which has existed for even years before that. But Dataverse in its current incarnation with the current technical architecture that we have developed has been around since 2006, so about 20 years. Our development is funded both by funding from IQSS and Harvard, but also with grants that we get from different institutions and organizations. And we collaborate with different institutions to get these grants. So different partnerships we work on with different groups provide us grants and we work with them. We do have a core team that we consider that is our core team that we have at IQSS, which includes the development team, it includes the UI UX people, it includes people who know about the metadata, the creation team with Sonia Barbosa, who will be joining remotely in these next few days, and also the leadership team, the project management, technical lead, things like that. But we have expanded this idea of the core team to also include key contributors from the community. And so what that basically means is as we've worked more and there's people in the community who are working really hard and adding features and doing things. So we've given them full privileges that they have the same privileges that we at the IQSS team have on GitHub. They come to our meetings, our regular stand-up meetings. They come to our technical hours. They have the same ability to review PRs and to merge PRs into the code base and things like that. So we continue to expand the core team both internally but also externally as the community continues to grow. Okay, so what are the Dataverse features? Once upon a time when I would give this presentation, I would list a bunch of features on here, but it has grown large enough that now it's just easier to provide a link. You can go there and you can see the full list of all the different features that we have. But the main thing to really discuss about the features is that what we've done is we've separated out the idea that the core code of Dataverse, which is what you find in the Dataverse GitHub repository, is really focusing on the publishing aspects of data, of being able to cite your data, being able to share, being able to create different versions and publish different versions, and basically supporting the FAIR data principles, making sure the data is findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And then we provide robust APIs, which allow interoperability with other, what we call external tools and other repositories and softwares. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute when I talk a little bit more about the APIs. So there are a few foundational feature aspects to Dataverse that I always like to talk about. So the first is this idea that we have of Dataverse collections. And so when we first came up with the Dataverse collection idea, really it was a way of organizing your data in a hierarchical way that will work for whatever means that your organization has. And so, for example, different installations run Dataverses differently. There's one out of the University of Virginia, which is just for UVA researchers, and I use this one as an example through some of my other slides. But their top level collections might be for the individual researchers at their university or the individual departments. There are others, DataverseLV is an example, that are consortiums, national consortiums. And so there, the top level Dataverse collections might be the different universities. And then within there, then maybe they have the departments and individual researchers. But the idea is you can hierarchically structure your data the way you need to. As we've learned, Dataverse collections actually serve another very useful tool. Whenever we add a new feature, one of the things we used to decide basically like, is this a feature that someone should be able to design and configure at the installation level, or something that's specific to data sets and every data set should be able to decide? And realized that we also actually want a middle ground of the collection. So collections, as well as being used for hierarchy, are used to define different rules. And some examples will be the metadata and the permissions, and we'll talk about that in a second. But also more recently, as we continue on new features, we find that a lot of them we define them at the collection level. For example, the idea to define quotas of how much data someone can upload. You can define it per collection. So one collection can have a certain quota, another collection can have a different quota. Another, for example, that's very useful, and especially in the consortium model, is the ability to define which S3 bucket is used for storing the data. And that way, for example, one installation can support multiple institutions, which each institution is paying for their own data storage because they pay for their data bucket. And you define each collection to say, okay, it's going to use bucket A, second collection uses bucket B, things like that. Okay, so then the next foundational architectural part of Dataverse is the metadata and how we support that. And again, this is one of those things that's defined at a collection level of what metadata is supported for your collection. But the idea is that rather than how we originally did Dataverse back 20 years ago, where we defined very statically what the fields were, it's now all defined dynamically within the database. And so what this allows is, as we learn and start working with different groups, we can define what their metadata is based on standards in a way that it's a right now a TSV file, a tabulated file that we can just upload into Dataverse. It means you don't need to run a new version of Dataverse to support new kinds of data. So here on the right, you see an image of some of the metadata blocks, what we call metadata blocks, a collection of metadata fields that come with Dataverse by default. But again, as we work with new groups, if we work with, for example, chemistry, maybe their metadata follows a certain standard and we want to add their metadata as a type of metadata supported by their collections. And so we can do that by, again, defining it dynamically in these files and then just uploading it into Dataverse. And this allows us, we can create single or multiple values. So for example, in the bottom right, you see the citation metadata block. Title is a single field. Author is multiple. There might be multiple. Some are simple or compound. Compound is just, author consists of not just the name, but also the affiliation, the identifier for the author, things like that. And we can define different control vocabularies. And we have multiple ways of defining control vocabularies. Some are internal to Dataverse, but we also have the ability to define external control vocabularies where Dataverse looks up on an external system. And for example, we use that for authors, for ORCID identifiers, things like that. Okay, a third technical architecture foundation is the permission system. And again, this very much leads to how we want to support different kinds of users and different workflows. And an example is, again, at the University of Virginia, their repository is just for UVA researchers. So they can define their permissions to make sure that no one can upload data except for someone who's a researcher at UVA. At Harvard University, our repository, our model is to be open and try to encourage anyone to deposit. So anyone can actually deposit into Harvard Dataverse. But similarly, some of these permissions also, besides just who can add, is more importantly almost who can publish. We saw when Kristaps talked about how data gets into the DataverseLV and how it gets, people come and review and things like that. So basically, you can define if in that model, and like it's also used by journals, the idea is maybe anyone can add a data set into your Dataverse collection, but only you have the permission to publish it. Now that works great in that model, but for example, at Harvard, when we give a Dataverse collection to the professor who basically, funds and runs our organization, he doesn't need to have his data sets reviewed by someone else. So we can set it so that the person who deposits to that collection can deposit. No one else can deposit, only that individual can deposit, but they also have the rights to publish themselves and can self-publish into their collection. And so again, with the flexible permission system, you can define all these different kind of workflows. We do it by assigning roles to individual users or groups, and these groups can be defined statically. I can say, this group consists of person A, B, C, or I can define them dynamically. And so, for example, you can define a group as anyone logging in from a particular institution. We have, for example, at Harvard, anyone who logs in from Harvard has immediate access to certain data sets just by having logged in through their Harvard key. And then the last of these foundational elements of Dataverse is the APIs. When we first started working on this architectural model of Dataverse that we started maybe a little over 10 years ago, we wanted to make sure that anything that could be done through the UI could also be done through the API. And we've gotten mostly there. I always pick some random number between 80 and 90% to say that much functionality supported in the APIs. That said, one of the things we're working on right now is a new, more modern UI, which actually interacts with the backend through the APIs. So as we've been going in the past few years, that number has kept growing and growing and growing, such that at some point in the near future, it's going to be 100%, because the UI will be using the APIs directly. So the only way you can do something through the UI is through the API, which means it has to be supported. So these APIs, again, they exist for any kind of functionality in Dataverse. You can search with the APIs, you can deposit data, you can access the data. There's administration to these configuration things I talked about in collections can be configured through the API. We also do have APIs for harvesting. Kristaps talked a lot about harvesting from some of the other repositories and that have Latvian data. And so that's done via APIs with this protocol called OAI PMH, Open Archive Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting. And then we also have this concept of we call external tools. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's basically tools that have been developed primarily for use with Dataverse and provide some of the more interesting functionality. Like I said, the core code is really the plumbing, the versioning and publishing, but these tools that allow you to view the data, preview the data, do extra curation of the data, for example, for tabular data, be able to edit the variable metadata level. There's a tool at the dataset level produced by a group called ICPSR called Turbo Curator, which uses AI to help curate and improve the metadata of a data set. So all these tools that have been developed, that some of them have developed by our team, but others are developed by other people in the community, but they communicate to the core code also via these APIs. And some of these tools you can register within the Dataverse, again, using an API, so that the Dataverse UI knows about the tool and can basically provide links to get you from the core code to this extra external tool. Okay, so what's the technology we use for Dataverse? It's basically your standard Java web app. We're using Payara on the back end and the latest Java technologies. We are currently using Java for the front end, the JSF Java server faces. But again, as I said, we're working on a new front end that is written in React. It's coming very soon. And we hope to have it at least available running in parallel with the JSF soon. And then hopefully by the end of this next fiscal year, even have it be that we can actually retire the JSF. And then for storage, we use Postgres for all the metadata definitions and user information. Solr we use for indexing. And then there are multiple different ways to store the file. Primarily, the main one that's used is S3, Amazon, but you can use, a file system or even Swift, some installations use. Okay, that's my intro to Dataverse. Now I'll talk a little bit about the community. I won't go too much into this because after this, my colleague Phil will talk and dive much deeper into community. So just some high-level community things. The community itself consists of thousands of people, and we in fact have had over 220 people actually even contribute to the project. So it's nice to see this robust community actually helping and working with us. And these contributions, much of it is developers and code, but it also can be help writing tests. It can be help writing documentation even. So it doesn't even have to be technical people. But like I said, the actual community beyond that is, I should probably update this slide to say thousands of members instead of hundreds, since the contributors themselves are already hundreds. But we interact with them in many ways. We do different workshops and trainings, like this week here in Latvia. We do UI UX testing. We have something called the Global Dataverse Community Consortium. I'll talk about that more in a minute. We communicate via many different ways. There's a Dataverse Google group with email. There's Matrix, which is used for, actually, it's no longer Matrix, right? Now we use Zulip. So I should update the slide to say Zulip, but we use that basically more as an instant messaging. And we had a community Slack, which is still there, but again, Zulip really is primarily now the use. We also hold monthly community calls where we, maybe talk about the most recent release and or invite different users from the community to talk about some of these external tools or other features and aspects that they have been working on. And annually, we have a Dataverse community meeting that has been hosted at Harvard and is now hosted by different installations around the world. It's actually next week in Barcelona. So if you still have time and want to book a ticket, please join us next week. And one of the things at the community meeting that we always do is we play the Dataverse Cup. So it's not just about, challenging your mind and everything, but we make sure to get some physical exercise. And it's a way I can always sneak in Lionel Messi into my slides, at least for now. We'll see what happens this summer at this World Cup. Okay, so the Global Dataverse Community Consortium. Basically, this is an organization that was funded in the community to help support data repositories around the world. The idea is it's run not just by Harvard, but also a lot of the major institutions that are using Dataverse. And for example, one of the main things that is there is to help provide support for getting DOIs. Rather than going to DataSite or a DOI provider directly, if you go through the GDCC, you can get them at a less expensive price. Another example is a lot of times different institutions don't necessarily have the ability to hire a full-time employee to work on developer to work on code and work on a feature, but they have some funding. So maybe they talk to the GDCC and say, okay, we can provide maybe a half worth of a developer, and we are interested in this feature. And there's another institution which is interested in the same feature and can provide the other half. And so if you talk to the GDCC and what the features is and everything, maybe some developers that work directly with the community and are part of that core team can help work on that feature for you, if you can't hire a developer fully yourself. So in the community, I thought I updated this slide. It's actually 147 installations around the world. I'm not sure why it's not showing the most recent number there, but here we see the more recent number on some of the metrics. 147 installations. There's over almost 23,000 collections, almost 500,000 data sets, more than 12 million files, which have been downloaded 230 million times. This is metrics that we've collected from 110 of those 147 installations. Basically, we added the metrics in version 4.9. So it's anyone running that version or later who has let us know, and we can, grab their metrics and add to our totals here. Okay, Next, let me talk a little bit about the recent releases of Dataverse that we've had. So DataverseLV in particular is currently running version 6.7.1. So I figure I could talk a little bit about the version since then. We release Dataverse every 3 months, so 4 times a year is our cadence. So since 6.7.1, we've released 3 versions, 6.8, 6.9, and 6.10. The reason it's 6.10 and 6.10.1 is we found a bug in 6.10 that was severe enough that we've taken 6.10 off of GitHub, but we've produced a 6.10.1. So 6.10.1 is the official version for 6.10, which is all the features of 6.10 plus no major bug. And so what I'll do here is I'll go through each release. Here are some highlights. I usually focus on one specific feature from that Dataverse, but if you're interested in learning more about each release, there's a link to the full release notes for each version. So in the case of 6.8, I'll talk a little bit about the logs for diagnosing PID failures. And so the reason I like highlighting this one is because one of the things about every Dataverse release is it's always a combination of the code that we work on directly at the IQSS team, plus pull requests for things that are interesting from the community. And one of the things is almost 100% of the time, if there's a feature that some installation is interested in the community, there's going to be at least one other installation, if not 10, if not 100, if not all the other installations that are interested in that same feature. So we like to highlight the different community features that people have created because, you know, some other installation might be like, oh, wow, we would love to use that feature. So in this particular case, one of the installations QDR was interested in learning more about when people click on PIDs and Dataverse returns a 404. And this can happen if for some reason there's an extra trailing period in the PID, or if someone has shared the persistent identifier for a draft data set and they share it with someone who doesn't have permission. So prior to this feature, there was no information stored about this, but if you turn on a feature flag, and a feature flag is basically a way we have of, I can turn on some features that I'm interested in, but they are not necessarily by default. So when you turn that on, Dataverse will actually track that if someone goes to one of these PID links that return a 404, it'll track information about it, put in a file called PID failures. And also, actually, there's a script that was written in the Dataverse recipes GitHub repository, which helps generate and email monthly PID failure reports. So basically, this institution, again, was interested in learning how often do people go to hit a persistent identifier for my repository and actually get a 404 error and learn more about why that's happening. So maybe they can help educate, okay, you know, don't share your draft PIDs with people who don't have permission, or, you know, finding out what the different failures might be. 3 months later, 6.9 came out. And so the issue that I will highlight in this release is role assignment history tracking. So we've always had the ability to basically request access to files that are restricted and then grant access, but we didn't necessarily track the history. So this is another feature that's set with a feature flag. It's off by default, but if you turn on the feature flag, we will store this information and be able to produce a display of it. So you can see who assigned or revoked that role, when it happened, and which roles they were gotten. So you get a full audit history of knowing, okay, user X had permission to download this file from January through March, and then it was revoked by administrator Y. And this information, besides it being available in the UI, is also available via API in CSV and JSON formats. Okay, and then our most recent release was version 6.10 and 6.10.1, as we spoke about. And in this one, I'll talk a little bit about review data sets. I cover it high level. If you're interested in learning more about review data sets, Phil is the one who primarily worked on this code, so I think we can dive deep into anything about review data sets you're interested in. But the basic idea is review data sets are a specialized type of data set that can be used to review resources, for example, other data sets, in either your installation itself or external data repositories. So we built this feature on top of a feature called dataset types, which we added, I think, in version 6.3 maybe, or over a year ago. It's currently only available via API. We are working on the UI, but as we're working on this new modern UI, we're realizing, we don't necessarily want to keep working on 2 different UIs. So newer features are reserved for the new UI only. So it will be available as part of the new React-based Dataverse front end in the near future. But right now it's available via API. But as you can see on the right, we do have a screenshot from the JSF version. That's because creating a review data set is only available via API, but once you've created it, you can go in and edit a data set that's a review data set via the current existing UI. And so one of the things about review data sets is they're configured to use a new metadata block called review, which contains these fields that relate to review. So that's what this screenshot is. You can see that the review fields include a URI, what is the type of object that you're reviewing, and a citation for that object. And this feature is still fairly experimental. It's new, and we're still working with some partners on how they want it to work. So, it will be evolving a lot over the next several months, I would imagine. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the future plans and what we do at Harvard IQSS. So what do we do on our core team at IQSS is we work on the code for Harvard Dataverse, obviously. One of the things we do is we support Harvard Dataverse. Sonia will come to us and say, oh, I need this added. I need this feature for my users, or she might find some bug that is specific to the workflows she works on. So those always are things we discuss about in our prioritization meeting and often take a priority for the next release. We also do facilitate community development. Again, as I showed, some of the features were developed by the community, that PID logging, for example. So pull requests will come into the GitHub repository from the community. We will review them and triage once a week and move them into ready for review. And some developer from the core team will review it. It'll get QA'd. And, we facilitate that process to get in what the community is working on. We also work on several different grants and projects. One of the bigger ones that we've been working on for the past 4 or 5 years, or 4 years, I think, and is extending into a 5th year, is this project with the USA's National Institute of Health. It's called the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, GRAE for short. And there's an individual proposal that we talk about what we want to do at Harvard, but there's also been a lot of what they call co-opetition, a competition and a cooperation and competition. They came up with co-opetition, but it involves us and a lot of the other open source repositories and non-open source, actually, Figshare on there, that are generalist repositories, Dryad, Figshare, Zenodo, things like that. And then, of course, there's a lot of other Dataverse-related projects and partnerships we work on all the time, depending on what grants and funding we've gotten from different organizations. So here's a little bit more about the GRAE program activities. I don't necessarily think we need to go in detail, but you can see it covers a lot of different functionality. One of the things that we were very excited to join this project is most of these things are things that we wanted to work on anyway. And so it was nice to have a partner which was helping funding to making that work. And a lot of this, we've made a lot of progress over the last 4 years. So we've made a lot of progress with Make Data Count. We have a lot of support now for remote large storage support. I think one of the things that I thought we had on here, but was also maybe, right there, the evaluation and evolution of the architecture. That's where we came up with the idea of, well, let's re-architect the front end to be this more modern React front end instead of relying on this older JSF technology. And so what is our upcoming release plan? Like I said, we release a new version of Dataverse every 3 months. So we have 6.11 planned for June 2026. We'll probably talk a lot more about that at the community meeting next week. So again, please join us if you can. Here's a link to everything that's currently in the milestone. And again, it's an evolving release as we continue to work on it this month and into June beyond the community meeting. And then beyond that, we will keep making new releases every 3 months. We will hope to complete the SPA work within the next year, so we can eventually retire the JSF completely. There's some related projects that we've worked on. We have a Dataverse marketplace where we talked about earlier about those external tools. And so it's an easier way for Dataverse installations to find and install those tools rather than have to go to the command line to do things and call the API directly. It provides a nice search, and then you can click on a button, provide it your URL and your API key, and it will install it for you. There's a Dataverse hub, which is where we're starting to gather the metrics into a more centralized area. We continue to work on more external tools and ways we can integrate with AI and use it for metadata curation and the last one also for external search. Right now, search is with Solr through keywords, but we have worked on having natural language search and also being able to search, for example, if my main language is Latvian, I can type in my search in Latvian and it will return data sets that are not just in Latvian because they match the keyword, but also words in the same that would match the search because in English or whatever other language is in that repository. If you want to learn more about the roadmap, you can go on this link. It shows our strategic goals and what we're working on, recent releases, all that information is on there, as well as the current stuff we're working on. And that's it for me. Community meeting next week if you want to join us. And then now we'll move on to Phil, and he'll go into detail about the community. But we have a question first, so.
I think you mentioned in your talk a bit more about these integrations, and like one integration in particular that has been on our radar as potentially to kind of look into, because as data stewards in Latvia, we work with the whole life cycle of the research data, right? Not only with depositing it at the end, but also preparing research data management plans and so on. And with that, we also have like tried different kinds of software for research data management plans. I saw it was on your slide about this new project that you mentioned. So yeah, do you currently have some good kind of integrations between research data management plan platforms and Dataverse? Because we had this idea that ideally, sometime in the future, it could be that a researcher fills out the research data management plan before they start the research, and they already have some metadata in that plan that they have to specify, like that could be very easily then transferred into a repository, so you don't have to sort of fill in the same information in two different platforms and then two different documents.
Yeah.
Like, is that something that has been on your radar of this integration?
Yeah, we definitely have integrated with different tools. There's research lab notebooks that we've worked on, for example, that, again, they have their process there, but then again, the APIs exist for depositing. And so rather, like you said, rather than deposit in two different places, you can, fill in your metadata information on that other tool, and then that tool needs to, have the logic to call the APIs for depositing. But we've done that. We've done that with like OJS, Open Journal Systems, so that people who are depositing, their paper can deposit their paper and the data at the same time in OJS, but then also it gets deposited through the APIs in the Dataverse. I think we have worked with some of the DMP tools as well. And yeah.
When you talked about the features of Dataverse, that's
Yeah.
a long list. The documentation working group is right now trying to make a new page so that you can find the features easier. And we realized if you look for DMP in our guides, which if you download as a PDF, it's like 850 pages. There's no mention of DMP, but there is an integration. It's not directly with Dataverse, but it's through a tool called RSpace, Research Space.
Yeah.
So if you set up that integration, then you can get this DMP feature. In the future, it would be nice to have a more direct integration, but that's what we have today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I think we have looked into it past as well.
Yeah, and when we talk about external tools, I've given separate talks focusing exclusively on that. And like the thing is, so there's some tools, and so DMP tools and things like that are you start outside Dataverse and it needs to talk to Dataverse. And so really, again, our role is really making sure the APIs exist that are needed, but the actual work needs to happen on that tool side.
Yeah.
Other tools and like the Turbo Curator and the preview tools are ones that you start in Dataverse and you want to be able to click in Dataverse to go to that tool. And that's, where Dataverse needs to know about it. So there's a way to register those tools in Dataverse. But again, Dataverse doesn't need to know about the other tools that are calling our APIs to deposit. It's the other way around. Those tools need to know about Dataverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know. Oh yeah, no, I have my phone. Switching slides for Phil's.
If you don't mind. Is it tricky to advance the slides, or is it just the arrow to advance the slides? Or
It's a button.
the button? Oh, the
Left mouse button, top left mouse.
Yep. Okay, to advance.
Just
Okay.
yeah, great.
Right. Well, hello. My name is Philip Durbin, and I'm a developer for Dataverse, and I'm sort of also the self-appointed community guy. So here I am today to talk about the community. First of all, to welcome DataverseLV to the Dataverse community. And I thought it might be useful to learn how to navigate the community a bit. Like Gustavo mentioned, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the community already. So, and I can't think of a better way to encourage community than hosting in-person events like this. So thank you very much for bringing us here. It's my first time to the Baltics, and I'm very excited. I also want to thank you for sending so many Latvian athletes our way to Boston. It's been wonderful having them. And just a couple words about this Academy Award-winning movie, Flow. I first learned about this because I am so excited about open source, and I heard that this open source tool Blender was used to make this movie. So I enjoyed it back when it came out, and then I only more recently, as I was getting ready for this trip, realized, oh, this came from Latvia. How exciting. So I didn't see these statues around town as we walked around last night. I don't know if the statues are gone. Maybe they're in a museum now. I don't know. But great movie. Highly recommend. Is it there? Okay. Great. Okay. And we have this event today and through the rest of the week, and other events are already happening. It sounded like Dinah attended this one in Lithuania. Oh, some other colleagues. Okay, great. So there's already a Nordic Baltic Dataverse hub that's just was recently launched. This is a blog post from the Dataverse ambassador, Slava Tikhonov. So already a lot of things going on here in the Baltics. And of course, Gustavo mentioned how many installations there are around the world. I don't know exactly how many dots there are in Europe, but quite a few. So you're surrounded by a lot of peers. You're definitely not alone running Dataverse here in Europe. Okay, so this talk, hundreds or thousands of people in the community. This is a picture of a book, of a series of books I used to read as a kid called Where's Waldo, where there's complicated drawings of all sorts of activities, people running around doing things. And your task is to find Waldo. He's the guy with a striped shirt, funny hat. So I thought this might be what the Dataverse community looks like when you first join. Boy, there's a lot of activity, a bunch of ants running around, and I don't really understand what they're doing. It all seems very important. So I'm hoping that by the end of this talk, more will be revealed about how we work together, how we collaborate. I'm not saying that it's going to feel as smooth as planetary motion, but you'll understand everything as soon as I'm done speaking today, but hopefully we'll get a little closer to that. And I also want to back up and say that kind of to motivate like what we're about here. I assume that we're mostly data stewards in the audience here today, but I'm going to talk a lot about researchers. And to me, the important thing is to make our researchers as awesome as possible. This is a book that I recommend about making users awesome. And when I think about our users, I think these are some of the smartest people on the planet. Right? These are the researchers, the scientists. At IQSS, the Institute for Quantitative Social Science, where Gustavo and I come from at Harvard, our mission is to solve society's greatest challenges, right? So, and I'm sure that your researchers are doing similar work. You're trying to solve the climate crisis or similar things. Who knows? Medical things. So that's our goal, is to make our users as awesome as possible with all sorts of tools. Dataverse is just one of the many tools that we can give to our users. Right. So in my head, these are sort of the categories of users that we have. We mentioned researchers already. I would say the major split there is you've got probably lots of people just looking for data. They want to download data, they want to reuse, they want to analyze data. Then a separate group with overlap, of course, are people who want to deposit, upload, publish data. And then we talk a lot about, both in the software and just talks like this, we talk about curators, or seems like you like the term data stewards, which is great, data librarians, journal editors. These are all people who are helping the researchers get their data published. And then beyond that, there's sort of a long list of people that have various roles, and these all have to do with Dataverse. So when I say help desk, I mean people who are like taking in a question from the researchers about something about Dataverse. Admins, maybe they're configuring permissions, super users, or even higher. So you could kind of imagine this concentric circle of how much do you know about Dataverse, or do you need to know about Dataverse to get your job done? The researchers hopefully don't need to know too much. Hopefully the UI is very user-friendly and they can get their work done without much reading or asking for help. Yeah, so on down to the people installing the software, like sysadmins, API users, and then the development team itself and contributors. So, and then on the right here, we have a bunch of guides with these different audiences in mind. So researchers would want the quick start guide and the user guide, and then on down, a lot of documentation for something for everyone here. Okay, so let me focus on the researchers first, the people that we want to make awesome. The first thing from my perspective that you can do is just give Dataverse a try. I mean, here in Latvia, we have the DataverseLV installation you can use. And then multiple servers that we host as the Dataverse project that you're welcome to check out. It sounded like the DataverseLV is running Dataverse 6.7.1, which is great. It's a fairly recent release. But on our demo server, we have the very latest release, which is 6.10.1 right now. So if anyone wants to try out the latest release, you can do so there. Gustavo mentioned our upcoming 6.11 release. So it's not released yet, but a version of that, what will become the latest release, is already on our beta server. So if you're interested in just the very leading edge of stuff that just got integrated, this week, you can check that out. And then we have our production Harvard Dataverse installation. I only mention this because it is open to researchers around the world for free, up to a limit of megabytes and gigabytes of size. And so that's a great one for real data only. The other two, the demo and the beta server, are good for testing around. But yeah, we want to know what do you like, what do you hate with all these things. Feedback is a gift. This is something I picked up especially from this book called The Open Organization. It takes time to write an email, to send a chat message, to open a GitHub issue. So we really appreciate any feedback you give us. It can only make our product, Dataverse, better. I figure that if you're a researcher, you may not be in touch with us directly as the Dataverse project. You're probably talking to your local support people, and that's great. So I assume that that's what you're doing as a start, is reaching out to people who are physically near you at your institution or nearby. But I want to invite everybody who's a researcher and others that we have a lot of resources as a project so that you can get in touch with us pretty directly. We've talked about this chat system called Zulip that I'm a huge fan of, a mailing list on Google Groups, issue tracker on GitHub. We do usability testing. We have a UX user experience researcher named Julian Gautier. And if you follow this link, you can definitely sign up and say, I would like to do some usability testing. We've already heard about this monthly video call. We call it the Dataverse community call. And then you can also contact us privately with this support email address. Here at the bottom, I'm just showing one of the guides that I showed before is the contributor guide, which is relatively new. And top on the list is ideas and feature requests. So we always like to hear what your ideas are for the software. And yeah, again, just to emphasize, don't be shy. Please reach out. It's okay. If you're having a problem with Dataverse, it's not you, it's me. It's probably a bug in the software or something. There's probably something we can improve so that you don't have to think so hard when you're using the software. So let us know. We can try to figure out any usability problems and improve it for others in the future. Like I said, lots of channels are available for you to post, and you can definitely cross-post both Zulip and Google Groups. It's fine. Just get your feedback to us somehow. And now here I write, if desperate, read the fine documentation. This is kind of a joke. It looks like you folks at DataverseLV have already prepared documentation that I can't read for your researchers, and that's great. So I guess I would start there and see how that goes for you. But as I mentioned just before I started, we do have, if you download our documentation as a PDF, it's over 850 pages. So don't be scared. You can always search in there. And we do try to write, obviously, comprehensive documentation, but there's even more we can write. There's more we can improve there. But just thought I'd touch on the documentation. If you don't want to read something, you'd rather watch something, we have a little area of our website that we call Dataverse TV. And I'm highlighting a recent talk here on the right from colleagues, Kaylin Boyd, Sonia Barbosa, Philip Kanzit. And this is a nice overview of Dataverse, maybe similar to what you've heard here today, but from a different perspective. Sonia, for example, is the head curator at Dataverse. So I recommend watching this and checking out her slides. And then I mentioned the documentation working group. One of the things we're doing is trying to come up with a new place where people can find and share training resources. So that's this spreadsheet that you see at the bottom. A lot of these are already posted at Dataverse TV, but they're sort of interleaved with a lot of other talks. So we're trying to bring it all together into one place so it can be a nice resource that people can find for training. This is just a little bit of a sidebar that I think about as a developer. We have these 2-week sprints and we're putting out a release every 3 months. And I'm wondering sometimes how researchers find out about new features. I assume that, as you upgrade from 6.7.1 to 6.8 or whatever, then you let researchers know, hey, we did an upgrade and here's the new stuff. But of course, the researchers can also ahead of time read release notes. Maybe they say, oh, there's a great feature in Dataverse 6.9 that I want. So could you please upgrade us to that because we want that. So I'm not sure how engaged the researchers are in keeping up with the latest, but just something I think about. Okay, so let's move on to curators. So you're deeper into Dataverse at this point, and you're helping the researchers. So I would say all of the above applies. So please engage with us on Zulip in the Google group, GitHub, everything. Join the community calls, all that stuff. And then, like I say, I believe the researchers are mostly giving the feedback to you. So I'm sort of counting on you to surface that feedback back to us. So please do pass along anything. If the researchers are too shy or too busy to interact with us directly, please pass along anything. That's why I drew this or put this funnel here that I figure all of it, the feedback will come back to us. You might want to connect with other curators, and a good way to do that could be to join a working group or to start a new working group. A couple that I'm mentioning here are the large data support working group and the sensitive data working group. And these are all on this website, gdcc.io. And as Gustavo said, that's for the Global Dataverse Community Consortium. So if you see me talk about links there or dataverse.org, it's all the same people, more or less. You can definitely trust those links and check out these resources. All right, if you're a curator, I'm going to plug Zulip again, the chat system we use. We have a variety of channels, and we can make more, but I would say popular channels are the community channel, which is sort of the catch-all, general channel, and then troubleshooting is very popular. But then I'm highlighting a few others here, like documentation, geospatial, grants, indigenous data, large data, and of course, you can all DM each other. So I do direct messages in Zulip. I put out a newsletter, and I've been doing this for about 9 years, that I call the Dataverse Community News. It's monthly, so every month when it rolls over, I summarize from my perspective what's been going on in the Dataverse community in an email. So I post it to the Google group. And I guess I didn't put this on the researcher area because this tends to be information that's a little more for curators and sysadmins and super users, stuff like that. So obviously researchers can read this as well, but I think there's some good stuff for curators in here. This is, again, more about the community calls. It's a video call that we host on Zoom. It's the first Tuesday of the month. Yes. So it's right after I send the community news. So I tend to do a summary of the news during the call. And then usually we have some sort of guest speaker. Someone's giving a demo of some software they've created that's related to Dataverse, or it could just be a special topic that someone's interested in. We had folks from Texas recently talk about retention strategies. So they presented their thoughts on how long do we want to keep the data, and then other people weighed in, and now they're going to be presenting in Barcelona next week. So a lot of times you can just kind of kick off a topic within the community, and then more people will join you, and we'll get some more discussion going. And yeah, we keep mentioning next week, Barcelona, so excited. Christoph, I think, will be there.
Yeah.
Great.
But I won't be able to make it to the cup.
Oh, no. No Dataverse Cup for you.
Yeah, I'll arrive at
Okay.
in the evening.
Okay.
Comments.
Okay. Well, that's okay. That's okay. Maybe next year. Yeah, this will be great. It'll be including the satellite day at the beginning. They're calling the satellite meetings, and that's I think when the cup is the first day, right? So it'll be a 4-day conference. So it should be great. Our former boss, Mercedes Crosas, who led the Dataverse project for many years, is now at the Barcelona Supercommunity Center, and so she's the one who's hosting this event now. So it'll be great to see Mercedes again. Oh, and this is just a website that I vibe coded a few weeks ago. It's new. It's just an idea I had. So if you go to people.dataverse.org, you see a list of over 300 people. The reason I built this originally, well, it used to just be a spreadsheet where I would see a GitHub issue come in from a weird name. It would say like Beepsoft or it would say Poikilotherm. And I'm like, who are all these people again? And so now, so in the spreadsheet, I would say, okay, Poikilotherm is with this installation of Dataverse in Germany, and Beepsoft is one in Hungary. And so I already had the data in a spreadsheet anyway. And so then I just sort of created this using Codex, created this website so that it's all based on GitHub usernames, but then I pull in some the names from GitHub and any information I can get. And so it's just a way to for me to remember who are all these people and how are they related to what installation of Dataverse, and then you can have your own profile page. So it's just a fun website I built recently. So let me know if you'd like to be added to this website. Okay, let's move on to admins and super users. Again, all of the above. So, if you're an admin, you're getting pretty deep into Dataverse. If you're a super user, you don't even have to worry about permissions. So maybe, and then we have a good number of features that are super user only that you'll see in the guides. You're probably the person that's making decisions about when to upgrade. You might be reading the release notes and deciding when do we want to do that upgrade. And hopefully you're receiving any security announcements. If you're not, please sign up so that you are, which also might impact your decision to upgrade. Okay, sysadmin. So if you're the sysadmin, you probably installed Dataverse or you inherited it. You worry about security, you worry about upgrades, you worry about AI bot traffic, but you love your users. So some recommended channels for you in Zulip are troubleshooting and containers, and also the containerization working group. I say here that it's secretly a DevOps group. Not really. We do talk a lot about Docker and all things containerization, but that is where you'll find a lot of the sysadmin folks. So please join us there. API users. This is a sort of a funny bunch because you could be any number of roles as an API user. You might be a researcher who wants to automate some of your tasks, or maybe you're a super user who's using these super user only APIs. Gustavo talked about external tools and integrations. Maybe you're someone like that who wants to integrate your software with Dataverse. We have a variety of client libraries. You see a long list of languages over here on the right. I would say the Python client library is especially active. There's a working group dedicated to PyDataverse, as it's called, which is secretly a Rust group as well, if you're into Rust. So in Zulip, the Python channel is the place to talk about that library, but I would also say APIs in general. And then as we re-architect the entire application, as Gustavo mentioned, we have a new UI written in React, and under just a level below that, we have a library that we call JS Dataverse. So that's also an API client. So I would say lots of activity in PyDataverse and JS Dataverse. There's also a channel for UI dev. So yeah, just if you're using the API, have questions, and also all of the above. You can definitely ask any API question on Zulip. Any channel is fine. We'll find it, or the mailing list is good as well. Okay, if you want to be a contributor, so now we're getting like closer and closer to the inner circle here. Again, feedback is a gift, so please give us feedback. We have that as the first bullet here, again, under the contributor guide, ideas and feature requests, and another plug for usability testing. But yeah, documentation, translations, code, answering questions online, sample data, issue triage, giving talks, I would say hosting events like this, working groups, being involved in the GDCC, artwork. Yeah, there's so many ways. We could add even more ways to contribute, but yeah, please get in touch if you want to help. I mentioned the data retention discussion that happened during a community call some months ago. Other examples, there's a group in Syracuse, New York, where they are funding an effort to improve the Dataverse software so that you can put more information about funding. How is the dataset funding? So it's just an example where they kicked off a thread on the Google group saying, hey, we have some money, we're going to fund this development, and we want input from you, the community, because we could just do it our way, but with a broader view, we could make it work for more installations. There's a group in the Netherlands from Dans who are working on per-file licensing. So in a similar way, they've posted a document where they've put out their thoughts of how they think per-file licensing should work. And they've already met with us at least twice. So this is a way you can help. If you have an idea for a project, if you can lead the effort to get people on the same page of how the feature should work, that would be lovely. There's lots of standards work. Dataverse supports all sorts of standards, and I'm just mentioning a few here, but there's a relatively new standard called Croissant that I've been a part of. This work, it's an export format, similar to OpenAir maybe. There's the Research Data Alliance, there's DataCite. Lots of projects and standards work is adjacent to Dataverse that you could be involved in. And then, yeah, another plug. I love these events, so keep events like this coming. It's great. Yeah, speaking of artwork, my daughter drew these animals that you can find at chat.dataverse.org. That's how you can get to our Zulip chat service. And you can just find me, Philip Durbin, on there if you have any questions. And I'm happy to answer questions right now as well.
I'm the one with a lot of questions. I guess that's also why we invited you to join us in person. Maybe not that much of a question, but just yeah, reflection on what you said. I think for us, we definitely had heard about like all these communities and groups, and I feel kind of one of the major barriers so far to join these community events was that we didn't know anyone in person, and it felt like weird to just appear on a Zoom call or like a Google Meet and join. But I feel now after we have met in person, and also Kristaps will have attended the community event. I hope that also other data stewards in Latvia will feel more free to join these groups, because as also Kristaps mentioned in his presentation, we are kind of thinking about a sensitive data management in the repository. Currently, our policy says that we don't accept any sensitive or even pseudonymized data, but with the idea that within the next years, we kind of develop our infrastructure in a way and procedures in a way that we can accept pseudonymized data, especially in Latvia. It's a big issue for interview data. So for qualitative researchers who want to publish their interview transcripts, for example, oftentimes they're identifiable in some contexts. So currently what we do, we deposit the metadata and then the file is stored with the researcher. But ideally would be, with the press of a button, we can request the access via the repository. So yeah, I was wondering with this with these working groups, like how often do they meet, and what kind of people usually join, and what could we expect as the outcome of these working groups? They have like set tasks what each group does.
I can give you a flavor of the ones that I'm personally
Yeah.
involved in. So I run the containerization working group. So this is like making it so you can run Dataverse in Docker. And we meet monthly. I'm also involved in the documentation working group. And so I think I mentioned on the side here, we're doing putting in the guides a list of features, because we want people to be able to easily find DMP or any such feature. So that's our current project, and the training resources that I mentioned. That is also monthly. Very nice group of people there. Kind of a different audience, like the containerization is like the propeller heads, the really a technical, very technical people, and then the documentation is less technical, but still super. Like, you can make so much impact with better documentation, so it's great. So that those are both monthly, and then PyDataverse also monthly. Technical again, but great stuff. The other two active groups are large data support, which is going to meet next week in Barcelona, and then sensitive data. I think I saw Sonia post something like they might switch to quarterly. Those two groups don't meet quite as regularly, but maybe with some new interest, they could meet more often. I don't know. Just a comment on what you've presented is that I'm very impressed by. It seems like you've pretty quickly put together a service, like from spring of last year, and then now it's not only in production, but you have core trust seal already. And by the way, on our map, we put a little link. I don't know if we added it for you guys yet, but we should. We did already? Okay, good. Okay, good.
I sent a request or.
Okay, Julian may have added it already. So just good job, you guys. And all this this documentation and everything looks like you're just. I feel like you seem to be a good model where I can say these folks took our software and fairly quickly put it into production and got the certification, and look at them go. Like, you should follow their lead. So.
It's nice to see it too as a confirmation of, we've been trying to make it easier and easier to install and get started. Like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was doable, but it was a little bit harder, and whatever. And so it's nice to see, like, okay, the efforts we've been making to make it easier, hopefully, and we'll learn more from you how easy or hard it was as you work through it. But like, you made it successful. So that's nice to see.
Yeah. You make it look easy.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was exactly easy, but yeah, I think
Diana said that I should present it positive.
Oh, well, no, it's good. Sounds good.
Yeah, we tried to focus on the successes, not on all the dead ends we entered while trying out different things.
And I have one more question for you guys, because you said it's free. But what about if people come to you with like terabytes of data? Because that's the problem we've had. And the solution we're using is Globus.
Oh, yeah.
Is the technical like back-endy thing. But then we're also starting to charge money for like, look, if you have so much data, we can't host it for free. So I was just curious your thoughts on free forever.
We don't have set limit to data set size because none of the researchers had asked to deposit that large files. But I think if they would come to us for the terabytes of data, then we would just suggest them to deposit into the institutions like some servers.
Yeah.
Right, because it seemed like one other thing I noticed is that there is the standard gatekeeping, let's say, of you can't publish, you have to submit for review. But it seems like you're also doing a gatekeeping of you can't be a dataset creator until they contact you first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Right.
So
you find out about their intentions.
Like tomorrow, like some random person can't deposit large data. They have to contact and say, hey, I want an account.
You probably ask how large is your data set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
some,
much peanut butter.
yeah, and some domains, the file sizes obviously are larger, but yeah, for those kind of data, often there are some domain-specific repositories. So we also don't position ourselves as the only repository that exists for Latvian researchers. So actually, also in our guide, we kind of say that the first choice would really be a domain-specific repository if one exists. So, for example, in genomics or in some fields of chemistry, they have already well-established repositories that are not hosted in Latvia, but like European ones or international ones. So we kind of recommend to first check out those options, because oftentimes indeed for discoverability of the data, it is much better if you're in a domain-specific repository. But then
And then
for
you
many,
harvest from there.
and yeah, we can potentially harvest or somehow display their
I forget
data.
if this is on your slides for 6.9, but being able to harvest from data site, at least
Well, from earlier than 6. I mean, that was a,
6.8 maybe.
I think it was like 6. I think it's part of the 6.
Yeah, I tried to harvest from the data side directly, but I had an issue with it. Can't seem to recall exactly what happened, but I think that it harvested the data, the files individually,
Okay.
not at all. They just set the files separately. Somehow like that, but yeah,
It might be just a case of tweaking the, what you send them.
yeah.
Because we developed that was a partnership we did with the group where they had a lot of data already in other repositories. And some of them had OAM PMH, so we could harvest them directly, but others didn't. And so like, well, what we can do then? Well, we have on DataSite, and DataSite introduces harvesting. So it was a good way. And what we found at least is that the way that you can define what you're harvesting from DataSite is fairly robust on how, what you're looking for in specific. So
Something else.
So what's next?
I think some pastries
Oh, okay,
probably,
that sounds good.
and some
I
tea
love-
and coffee. So
Are people still online?
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Everyone is still alive online. Is there anything in the chat?
Yeah, let's check.
Yeah.
Okay,
I guess no
no
questions.
questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so we thank all the people online. Very sorry that you're online today, because in person we have really a lot of pastries available and fruit even. So yeah, thank you for joining, and yeah, hope to see you in some other events online or in person. So yeah, check out Dataverse.lv for further information, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.